At 62, Cary Grant confessed that many of his marriages had never been about love. They were carefully arranged facades, designed to shield him from whispers that could destroy his career. Behind the charm and elegance, he carried a secret that the Hollywood machine refused to accept. The truth was that his heart belonged elsewhere, to men he could never publicly acknowledge. This was not the story audiences wanted, yet it was the life he was forced to live. The question is, how did a poor boy from England rise to the pinnacle of stardom, only to find his private world trapped in shadows? To understand that answer, we must step back to his beginnings, long before he was known as Cary Grant. Cary Grant was not born in Hollywood, but in the working-class streets of Bristol, England. He entered the world in 1904 as Archibald Alexander Leach, the only surviving child of Elias and Elsie Leach. His childhood was marked by both wonder and deep scars. His father worked in a factory and often drank heavily. His mother, fragile and melancholy, tried to shelter her boy with love, but their home was filled with tension. When Archie was only 9, Elsie disappeared from his life. He was told she had gone away to rest, but in truth she had been committed to an asylum without his knowledge. He would not learn the truth until decades later, and the wound of that loss shaped his restless spirit. Bristol at the time was a city of contrasts. The clang of shipyards filled the air, mingling with the songs of music halls and the street cries of merchants. For a boy with a vivid imagination, theater offered escape from the gray skies and narrow streets. Archie was mesmerized by vaudeville troupes, acrobats, and comedians who came through town. He studied their timing, their grace, their ability to make an audience laugh or cry. He began to dream of a life beyond Bristol, one that might lift him far from the grief and silence that hung over his family. The early 20th century was an unforgiving era for anyone different. Masculinity was defined by toughness, stoicism, and the ability to provide. Affection between men was confined to shadows and whispers, easily condemned as immoral or criminal. England, like much of the world, treated homosexuality as a punishable offense. For a boy who would later feel stirrings of attraction that could not be spoken, the warning was clear: silence was survival. At 14, Archie joined a traveling troupe of entertainers. He learned acrobatics, juggling, and pantomime, traveling across England with little more than his ambition. It was in the glow of theater footlights that he felt most alive. By 16, he had crossed the Atlantic with the troupe, stepping into the dazzling energy of New York City. The Roaring Twenties had begun, with jazz spilling from clubs, flappers dancing in fringe, and skyscrapers climbing higher into the sky. It was an America full of promise, and Archie saw his future waiting in its theaters. In New York, he polished his stage presence, studied American slang, and reshaped his accent. He shed the awkwardness of Bristol and cultivated poise. He was determined to build a persona that would command attention. Soon, Archie Leach would no longer be enough. He would become Cary Grant, a name destined to shine across marquees. But behind that reinvention, the wound of his past and the silence about his desires would follow him into Hollywood. By the early 1930s, Archie Leach had transformed himself into Cary Grant. The new name carried elegance, rhythm, and authority. He perfected his walk, his voice, and his presence, until every gesture radiated sophistication. Audiences saw a man of effortless charm, never glimpsing the boy who once juggled in smoky music halls. He arrived in Hollywood at a time when the studio system was tightening its grip, manufacturing stars like products, shaping every detail of their image. His first years were not easy. Paramount signed him in 1932, but critics called him stiff and too polished. Yet on screen, his tall frame and dark good looks made him stand out. He quickly learned to play suave leading men opposite glamorous actresses. Films like Blonde Venus with Marlene Dietrich and She Done Him Wrong with Mae West made audiences take notice. By the late 30s, Cary Grant had become the embodiment of sophisticated comedy. He glided through screwball classics like Bringing Up Baby, Holiday, and The Philadelphia Story. His timing was impeccable, his wit sparkling, and his screen partners adored him. Audiences saw refinement, But off-screen, he was navigating a far more complicated life. The studios demanded stars appear masculine, wholesome, and desirable to female fans. Any rumor of same-sex attraction was considered career suicide. Studio contracts included morality clauses that could end a career overnight. For Cary, this meant careful control of every friendship, every photograph, every word spoken in public. Gossip columnists were relentless, and the studios often planted stories of supposed romances with actresses to protect their stars. Despite the pressure, Cary reached even greater heights in the 1940s. He became Alfred Hitchcock's favored leading man, starring in Suspicion, Notorious, and later, North by Northwest. In these films, he embodied the modern hero, urbane yet vulnerable, caught between danger and desire. His face was recognized across the globe, his voice instantly familiar. By the time the 50s arrived, Cary Grant was considered the very model of Hollywood elegance. Presidents and princes admired him, and audiences adored him, but with fame came an even greater need to conceal. He shared a house in Malibu with actor Randolph Scott for years, and their domestic photographs hinted at intimacy that was impossible to admit. Magazines sometimes printed them as bachelor pals, but whispers followed both men. To quiet the rumors, Cary married. Again and again, marriages were used as shields, temporary answers to questions that could never be spoken aloud. Behind the bright lights, the weight of secrecy grew heavier. The higher Cary climbed, the more fragile the balance became. Stardom brought privilege, but it also demanded silence. And as the decades advanced, the line between truth and performance blurred. What the world saw was a leading man. What he felt in private was something entirely different. Behind the silver screen glow, Cary Grant's private world unfolded in shadows. He shared one of the most famous bachelor homes in Malibu with Randolph Scott. Photographs of the two men lounging by the pool, cooking together, or reading side by side appeared in fan magazines. The captions called them lifelong friends, but many insiders whispered about something deeper. For more than a decade, they lived as though married, creating a domestic space that gave them both comfort. Yet the truth of their relationship had to be hidden under the label of friendship. Hollywood in the 1930s and 40s was a place of coded signals. Parties hosted by trusted insiders offered rare moments of freedom. Behind closed doors, stars could laugh openly, flirt without fear, and find connection. Cary reportedly moved through these circles with both charm and caution. He was seen at intimate gatherings where men and women who lived double lives found brief sanctuary. For someone in his position, every smile, every touch, carried risk. Exposure meant scandal, lost contracts, and the destruction of carefully built careers. Randolph Scott was not the only man linked to him. Biographers have suggested close bonds with designer Ori Kelly during his early New York years. Letters and recollections hint at passion and jealousy, the kind of youthful romance that shaped him before Hollywood remade his identity. Later, whispers tied him to Howard Hughes, though the truth remains uncertain. Some accounts recall Cary being drawn to the power of men who, like him, built their lives on reinvention and secrecy. The details remain blurred, hidden beneath decades of denial and gossip. But the pattern was unmistakable. His truest affections were with men. The cost of such secrecy was immense. Studios often planted stories linking Cary to glamorous women. Publicity photos showed him escorting actresses, dancing at clubs, and smiling for the cameras. Some of these relationships had warmth, even fondness, but few carried the depth of his private bonds. When he did marry, the unions were brief and strained. 5 times he walked down the aisle, yet none brought lasting happiness. Behind the vows was a strategy, not romance. Each wife was caught in a web of expectation, unknowingly serving as a shield against suspicion. Cary moved cautiously, always aware of eyes upon him. Reporters hunted for scandal. Confidential magazine and other tabloids thrived on exposing secrets, often inventing or exaggerating stories to ruin reputations. For Cary, even a casual photograph with the wrong companion could spark headlines. He learned to guard his words, to smile while hiding his truth. The charm that audiences adored was not only performance on screen, but a mask worn in life. Still, in private, He longed for companionship. Those who knew him best described a man torn between longing and fear. He wanted love, yet dreaded the price of honesty. In the golden glow of Hollywood, his life was both a triumph and a cage, and as the whispers grew louder, the risk of exposure loomed ever closer. By the 1950s, Cary Grant was one of the most recognized faces on Earth. Yet the higher his fame rose, the more perilous the rumors became. Gossip columnists had long speculated about his years with Randolph Scott. Stories surfaced in magazines that hinted at an intimacy beyond friendship. Although carefully worded, the message was clear to those who read between the lines. Each new whisper threatened to pierce the carefully crafted image of Hollywood's most debonair leading man. The studios were ruthless in their defense of profit. Paramount and later other studios pressured Cary into marriages that would silence questions. His union with Virginia Cherrill in the 1930s lasted barely a year. Later came unions with heiress Barbara Hutton, actress Betsy Drake, and model Diane Cannon. Each marriage was photographed, reported, and praised as proof of his conventional life. But behind the magazine covers, tensions festered. The marriages faltered, ending in divorce and loneliness. He became known as both charming and elusive. A man who could never truly settle. The strain showed in his work. By the late 50s, he turned down roles, wary of overexposure and exhausted by pressure. Confidential magazine targeted other stars, and Cary knew he could be next. One wrong story could destroy the suave image he had cultivated for 3 decades. Colleagues recalled his increasing caution, his withdrawal from Hollywood social circles, and his obsession with protecting his privacy. His fear was not only of scandal but of losing everything he had fought to build since leaving Bristol as a teenager. The toll was deeply personal. Friends described him as melancholy, sometimes brooding, unable to trust. The boy who once dreamed under the lights of the music hall now lived surrounded by wealth yet haunted by secrecy. He longed for genuine connection, but each glance over his shoulder reminded him of the risks. The very qualities that made him adored on screen, elegance, wit, control, were armor forged in the fire of concealment. Hollywood offered no safe space. The Hays Code demanded strict moral appearances, condemning anything deemed indecent. Homosexuality was whispered of as scandalous, punishable by both the industry and the law. For Cary, living openly was unthinkable. Instead, he carried the weight of silence, watching as decades of artifice built a wall between who he was and who the world believed him to be. As the 1960s began, he faced a crossroads. The charm still worked, but the loneliness deepened. He could not stop the march of gossip, nor could he change a world unwilling to accept him. At his lowest, he considered leaving Hollywood altogether. The question became, what would remain if he stepped away from the stage and screen that defined him? By the mid-1960s, Cary Grant made a choice few stars dared. At the height of his fame, he walked away. In 1966, after filming Walk, Don't Run, he retired from the screen. Audiences were stunned, but Cary explained he wished to be present for his only child, Jennifer, born to his marriage with Diane Cannon. For once, he put family ahead of image, exchanging film sets for nursery rooms. The decision revealed a man tired of pretense, eager to find a quieter life. Retirement did not mean disappearance. Cary invested in business ventures, joining the boards of cosmetics companies and airlines. His financial instincts proved sharp, and he built security beyond Hollywood paychecks. He also crafted a new role for himself as raconteur. In the 1980s, he toured with a stage show called A Conversation with Cary Grant, answering questions from audiences, charming them with stories of old Hollywood. For many, it was a rare glimpse of the man behind the screen image. Yet even in these years, questions lingered. His 5 marriages had all ended, leaving a portrait of a man who seemed endlessly searching. Those who met him in private circles described warmth but also distance, as though a part of him remained locked away. When asked about Randolph Scott, he deflected with humor or silence. The truth of that chapter remained between them, sealed by time and fear. Changing social attitudes in the 1970s and 80s allowed younger actors to live more openly, but Cary had been shaped by a harsher era. To speak then would have risked everything. Silence had become second nature. Age softened him. He adored his daughter, often seen walking hand in hand with her, protective and proud. He also found peace in simple routines, away from the glare of cameras. The man once defined by tuxedos and champagne glasses could be found in quiet hotel suites, reading or reflecting. Reportedly, he spoke with regret about lost loves and the cost of keeping secrets. He had played the perfect leading man for the world, but at times wondered if he had ever been allowed to play himself. In November 1986, while preparing for one of his stage talks in Davenport, Iowa, he fell ill. He died that night at 82. The news stunned the world. Tributes poured in, hailing him as the very definition of screen elegance. Yet beneath the praise lay the untold chapters of a man who carried his truth silently to the end. Cary Grant's later years revealed both triumph and restraint, a life lived in grandeur yet haunted by what could never be spoken. Cary Grant remains one of Hollywood's most enduring icons, the man who seemed forever at ease in a tuxedo, with a sly smile and a voice that could soothe or seduce. Yet behind that image was a life marked by concealment. He built his career on reinvention, turning a boy from Bristol into the world's most debonair gentleman. But the cost of that transformation was silence about the loves that truly defined him. The secrecy of his personal life reflects the broader story of an era when authenticity could end a career. Stars like Cary were forced to marry for appearances, to pose for photographs that concealed more than they revealed, and to endure loneliness in exchange for survival. His story is not one of scandal but of survival, of a man who gave the world laughter and elegance while carrying his truest self in shadows. Today, as society reflects on Hollywood's hidden history, Cary's life reminds us of the price paid by those who could not live openly. His films remain timeless, but his humanity, the longing, the compromises, the resilience is what endures most. Behind the tailored suits and witty lines was a man searching for acceptance, never quite able to claim it. Cary Grant's legacy is not only about glamour. It is about the courage it took to endure silence, and the hope that future generations might live with honesty he could never fully embrace. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold histories of Hollywood's brightest stars.